one of the things that I talk to school psychologists about doing is if they have a student, perhaps it's a student that's a little trickier to test, or they're having trouble figuring out, well, a standardized norm reference assessment isn't quite going to work for the student, encouraging them to use other ways of looking at skill development. And so sometimes that's like bring in some games and like work with them. I will say some of the parents that I've worked with, one of the biggest ways they've advocated, and then school psychs have reached out to me of like, I'm not sure what to do, is the biggest thing they'll say is, I haven't gotten any useful information about from a psychoeducational assessment in a long time because everything is, I couldn't test them, or they're just very low, right? Like that's not helpful in planning. So encouraging the team to try to do things that are maybe a little bit more aligned with the student's strengths and being open to other activities. So I think it's fair for a parent to kind of, instead of like saying, I want a dynamic assessment, you might know what a dynamic assessment is now, but encouraging your assessment team to look at other opportunities for gathering information that you know are probably more successful for that student. So if you know there are games or things at home or logic games that you do, like kind of talking about those and sharing those activities and saying like, I know that demonstrating counting skills has been really challenging in the past for assessors to gather, but I do know that when we engage in this type of activity, maybe it's like a hopscotch activity, right? Like I know that they will count out loud. So being able to offer other activities that they might be able to see skills in, I think is a really easy way to kind of start pushing your assessment team to look at it from a different perspective. The other thing I would suggest too is encouraging them to look at the dynamics of the classroom. So one of the things, like I mentioned, when I'm doing a dynamic assessment, I go into the classroom and I look at what supports are being provided, and like what do those interactions look like. You can be like the person who's assessing can be the observer of that environment as well and see what levels of support are working. That will help inform accommodation development and things like that. So it can still be a part of the assessment in a less formal way, but it's still capturing the key information that we get from dynamic assessment, which is we're looking at overall skill development and we're looking at those supports and mediated learning. What does the individual do within that? So a nice approach, I think, from a parent would be to also encourage the assessment team to spend more time observing and doing intentional observation with what supports are being implemented and what does the interaction look like.